So welcome everybody. It's great to have everybody here that's on the call. And Shawnee and I were just discussing, we thought it would be great to start with one deep belly breath. So put your hands kind of below your belly button, because often we're breathing just from the top part of our lungs, and we want to train our nervous system to go deeper. So deep breath in to the bottom of our belly. And on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. And exhale. So welcome to the Mental Toughness Talk Q&A with Shawnee Harle. Now, Shawnee is an amazing human being. She is a 2-time Olympic assistant coach, and she helps athletes, parents, families, and leaders be their best. She teaches people how do we overcome what is holding us back. So we're so thrilled to have Shawnee here today, and I'm wearing my honorary Olympic jersey to support Canada and all of our athletes. So Shawnee, okay, first of all, what the heck is mental toughness? What does that mean?
I think, if you ask that question to 10 different people, you probably get 10 really good answers because there's a lot of definitions. The one that I really like is, I think mental toughness is 3 things. I think it's grit to manage setbacks. I think it's resilience to bounce back from failure. And here's the one I really like. I think it's courage to face our fears. So grit, resilience, and courage.
So grit, resilience, and courage. Now, okay, Shawnee, you say all these things, grit, resilience, courage, but how do we move into that place? We were just talking about when we played basketball, and you get that kind of nervous feeling, you get that uncomfortable nervousness. How do we move into that space, that kind of more alive and space? How do we do that?
For me, and everything that I teach to athletes and parents that I work with is that I don't think you can have mental toughness. I don't think you can have grit, resilience, or courage unless you think about what you're thinking about. Because if you're not thinking about what you're thinking about, then I don't know what, I don't even know how to finish that sentence. When we're not thinking about what we're not thinking about, it means we're in unconscious incompetence, which kind of means like we don't know what we don't know. And where I'm going with it is, I really believe that mental toughness and emotional intelligence and self-awareness are all related. I need to think about what I think about because I believe we don't have a choice over how we feel. But I think we have a choice over what we think and what we do. And I think our thoughts create our feelings. And therefore, if I'm thinking about what I'm thinking about and I get to choose, wow, like that makes me feel so empowered. I also believe that decisions decide destiny. And decision means I have a choice. I don't have to be stuck as a passenger on the bus. It means I can actually drive the dang bus. And I believe that that's what mental toughness is. I think about what I'm thinking about, and then I have the choice to shift to thoughts and actions that serve me better.
Thank you, Shawnee. Pardon me. Another question I have is, through this recent experience, we've all had moments of mental weakness. Is it okay to be mentally, to kind of have those low days? And if so, what does it teach us?
Oh, the answer is a resounding yes. In fact, I believe that every feeling is okay. I also believe that every feeling is necessary because they're called feelings because we're supposed to feel them. You know, that sounds like a line from Sesame Street, F for feelings. I also believe that feelings are so important for us to listen to. And I teach, we got to call in the FBI because feelings bring information. So if we only say, I'm only going to listen to my thoughts when they're happy ones, and every time I'm feeling scared or anxious about what's going on in this world, that I shouldn't do that and I better not pay attention to that, I completely disagree. I don't think that mental toughness is about judging our feelings, because feelings aren't a menu. You don't get to choose them. They're just there. And especially when things, we have a very uncertain world right now. It's going to bring up a ton of feelings. And I'm like, yeah, and let them all in. Bring them all in. And then pay attention to the information that they provide. So when people say, is it good or bad, right or wrong? Is this feeling okay or not okay? I'm like, oh, I see. You got two buckets. Here's the bucket of good feelings. Here's the bucket of yucky feelings. I only want to have the good ones, and I want to not have the bucket of yucky ones. And I disagree with that. I believe that feelings are all one bucket, and mental toughness and emotional intelligence is, what do I do with all of these feelings? And I also want to bring this up because I know there are some athletes and probably some coaches on here. Sport teaches us the exact opposite. Sport teaches us to only want the bucket of good feelings. How often have you heard in sport, just go out there and be confident? You're never supposed to show fear. You're never supposed to cry. You're supposed to pretend like an actor on the stage. Ooh, I'm this big confident athlete. And yet half the time we don't feel that at all. We feel scared. We feel anxious. We feel unprepared. We feel nervous. And I'm like, FYI, that is normal. So let's have some mental toughness and figure out what to do with these feelings. And let's get a new definition of what normal is, and then figure out how to manage it. In my lesson 2 of my mental toughness tutorial is, we only want happy, but I'm like, yeah, 50% of life in sport is also crappy. So you get happy and crappy, and you better learn how to deal with both. So that was a long answer of saying, yes, it is okay right now to not feel mentally strong. It is okay to feel fearful and anxious.
Shawnee, I love the way you just described happy and crappy. And I want to know, okay, so it's okay to feel both. It's okay to have these experiences. And how do we move ourselves to a place where we're building more resilience around the more negative side, the crappy side?
Well, I ask people, okay, so there's happy and crappy. You don't have a choice. Those are part of life. Those are part of sport. Those are part of relationships. So you don't have a choice. So how about let's figure out that happy and crappy are normal. And instead of trying to get rid of crappy, what I say to people, what if you could learn to tolerate crappy? That means you don't have to like it. In fact, you don't have to love it. You don't have to agree with it. What if you could learn to tolerate it? Kind of like, I always use the story. I remember when I was little and my mom would say, Shawnee, you have to eat your vegetables. And FYI, I could not stand vegetables. And if I even smelled Brussels sprouts, it would just give me the heebie-jeebies. Oh my gosh. So this analogy just hits me. And my mom would always say, Shawnee, you're not eating your vegetables because you like them. You're eating them because they're good for you. I'm like, dang it. And I kind of think of that with crappy. It's okay to not like the crappy feelings, but can you think of them that are like vegetables? You don't have to like them, but they're good for you. And that means, to me, you can learn to tolerate it. I believe that when we practice tolerating crappy, our tolerance increases. It's a skill. That means we can get better at it. That means that I can learn to tolerate failure. I can learn to tolerate anxiety. I can learn to tolerate nervousness rather than avoiding it, pretending it's not there, or trying to, they say fake it till you make it. I'm like, I don't really know if that works. How about let's tolerate it? And I think we can tolerate anything when we know it's temporary. And often these negative feelings, the anxiety and the fear, they are temporary feelings that don't last forever. I think tolerance is a very important mental toughness characteristic.
Thanks, Shawnee. So you've worked with Olympic athletes. What separates the good athletes from the true Olympians? And how does that apply to mental toughness?
I think that, if you talk to any Olympic coach in any Olympic sport, every single coach will have had the experience that talent can only take you so far. Because the higher you go, the more talent levels out. So talent no longer becomes the separator. Talent no longer becomes the differentiator. Think about an all-star team in any sport with any listener that's on the call. Think about an all-star team. Every single player on that all-star team is good. That's why it's called an all-star team. So what is the separator? And I can speak, from my Olympic experience with the 2 Olympic teams that I was with. We actually chose people based on mental toughness and character. We actually cut people that were more talented but didn't have the character and the mental toughness, because at the highest level of sport, it isn't always the talent that wins, because everybody's good. What's the differentiator? And I really believe that happens across all sport. Talent gets you here, and then there's this wonderful big space above the talent that everybody can become an expert in. Everybody can be a gold medalist in mental toughness, because it is a skill. You're not born with it. And anything that's a skill, that means you can get better at it. You can sharpen it and you can hone it.
So we can learn mental toughness is what I've heard, and it is truly a differentiator. What do you think people need most at this time in terms of mental toughness? What do you think we're looking for?
Well, I think what we're looking for is the exact thing that I can't offer. Because I think that we're looking for certainty, and I think that we're looking for predictability. And I cannot offer either of those. The same way when I'm working with an athlete who's preparing for an event or a competition or a tryout, and they're like, Shawnee, I need you to help me feel confident. And I'm like, nope, I can't, sorry. Because you're asking me to tell you that I know how this is going to play out. You're asking me to guarantee an outcome. That's what predictability and certainty is, that I know what's going to happen. And life is not like that. Sport is not like that. And if we ever need to learn how to practice predictability and uncertainty, it is now. It's in the middle of this crisis. Nobody's ever been here before. You want to talk about the height of uncertainty and unpredictability? We are right in the middle of it. And that's what I think everyone wants from me when they sign up. Help me feel better. I'm like, I don't know if I can help you feel better, but I can help you manage the uncertainty. Because remember, I said earlier, I believe that we get to choose our thoughts. And if we think about what we're thinking about, and actually have a little mental toughness challenge at the end of this for everybody, where I'll show you how to practice what you're thinking about. I can't help you with the outcome, because we all want predictability, we all want certainty, and in sport we all want to know we're going to win, we're all going to get the gold medal, we're going to make the team, we're going to score 20 points, we're going to ace every serve. Well, We know that doesn't exist in the real world. But how can we practice mental toughness, and how can we tolerate what's going on with us? How can we tolerate uncertainty? How can we tolerate anxiety? Part of it is paying attention to what you're thinking about and then choosing thoughts that serve us better. I'll get into that in a little bit more when I've got the mental toughness challenge ahead. And here I'm going to bring in, remember I started at the very beginning, I gave you 3 definitions and I said grit and resilience and courage. I think this is a wonderful time to bring courage in, because to be able to tolerate what's going on in our world, and if I take that down to another level and say being able to tolerate all of the feelings that come when you're getting ready to play in the gold medal game, or you're getting ready to serve on match point, you're getting ready to take a penalty kick that wins or loses. I really believe that a wonderful trait to bring in and a skill to practice is courage. Because to be able to tolerate anxiety and nerves and fear and all that comes on, I think courage, I wish I would have known. I'm like, I was just listening to what I was thinking when I said that, and I'm like, wow, I wish somebody would have told me that when I was younger. No one ever told me that. Everyone just said, go be confident. I'm like, what the heck? Go be confident? How do I do that? I didn't even know how to do that. But if somebody had told me, can you muster 1 degree of courage? Can you muster just 1 degree of courage? And you know, I can't remember if I was listening to it or was reading a book, but I'm going to pull in Brene Brown here because I think it fits wonderfully. She said, you can be brave and afraid at the same time. I'm like, that hit me right in the depth of my soul. And I'm like, I never knew that. I never knew that for most of my life. I never knew it ever, 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 ever when I was an athlete. So how do we handle this anxiety and this unknown and the unpredictability of what's going on in our world? How do we bring in mental toughness? Well, we learn to tolerate those feelings. We learn to bring in courage and say, it's okay to be brave and afraid at the same time. Because here's what I love about it, and you're going to see how this fits into the mental toughness challenge at the end. Afraid is a feeling or an emotion, and courage is an action. Isn't that awesome? Like when I'm like, bam! So that means I can feel, like I'm just thinking about sport right now with athletes that I work with. I'm like, right now, you can feel like you want to pee your pants, and you can still step up and volunteer to take a penalty shot. You can hold both of those things at the same time. That was one of the most empowering things that I had ever learned. And I think it really holds true. There's a lot of fear right now in what's happening in our world. And of course, that is totally normal, but can we be brave and afraid at the same time?
That's incredibly powerful, Shawnee, the whole brave and afraid, and be with both. I find the truth always lies in paradox, and that's holding the paradox. So I know Glencoe members would love to hear your practical tips. Nice. In terms of mental toughness at this time. Like, what actions would you suggest we do? And what kind of frame would you like to give the members in terms of mental toughness? Because I know you're very action-oriented and you get results. So I would love to hear that.
So members, before I share what that is, I'm going to share my screen and I'll show you 4 slides. Don't feel like you have to write anything down unless you choose to, because every slide that I'm going to show you is included in the attachments in the chat. So you will actually have a hard copy right there, because sometimes that's hard to listen and take notes at the same time. At least it is for me. So, second, get that out of the way. I'm going to share my screen with you. This is so exciting. All right, I'm going to show you 3 slides, and they're based on, you know, this formula. Remember I talked to you at the beginning about thoughts and why I think it's so important to think about what you're thinking about, because thoughts then create our feelings. Our feelings drive actions. And also, by the way, FYI, inaction is actually an action. So our feelings drive action or inaction, and what we do with those actions, those produce results. Come on. Trying to flip you down to the next. Now I get to practice my, I was just practicing my mental toughness because that felt really uncomfortable for a moment, because I thought, oh my goodness, what if my slides don't work? And then it did. Can you believe we have 60,000 thoughts a day? When I'm like, wow, didn't know that. And then what I found super interesting is how many of them are negative, and then not only that, how many of them are repetitive. And then I got thinking that, am I leveraging these 60,000 thoughts? Am I managing them, or are they managing me? What I learned when I thought about this for myself, and what I learned when I coach athletes, is that for many of us, our thoughts are like small children, unsupervised, running around the playground. You know, you think about recess at a playground with small children. What's everyone doing? They're falling off the monkey bars, you know, they're hitting each other, they're skipping, like it's just everything. And I thought, wow, what if I did a better job of being the parent of my thoughts? What if I did a better job of managing my 60,000 thoughts a day? What if I had a choice that 80% are negative and 95% are repetitive? What if I had some say in that? So I'm going to show you. Yes, look at that, popped up right away. I love it when that happens. This is a little toolkit for you. WAIT stands for what am I thinking? But what I love about the acronym is it actually is like, wait, chill, pause, take a deep breath like Catherine had us do before we started the session. Wait, and then say, what am I thinking? I think this is how we begin to think about what we think about. As soon as we begin to think about what we're thinking about, now we get to be the parent and the supervisor of our thoughts. Here's what I found, and when I'm working with these athletes, one of the reasons why so many of our thoughts are negative and repetitive is because most of the time we're thinking about things that are out of our control. And sport is all of the time, the athletes that I work with, most of what they think about is out of their control because it's based on a result. The result is out of our control. When you think about what you're thinking about, ask yourself, is this the problem or is this the solution? I believe what you're going to find is most of the time you're thinking about the problem. No wonder it makes you feel out of control and uncertain, because the problem just has us go round and round and round in negative, repetitive thoughts. Oh, that didn't come in right away. Now, yes. And this is where we move, we shift. So how do I shift from thoughts that are out of my control, that are negative, that are repetitive. And how do I shift? Remember I said at the beginning, one of the things that I think is so empowering about mental toughness is that when we think about what we're thinking about, it means I can actually choose a different thought. Wow. But only if I'm being the parent of my thoughts. Otherwise, my thoughts are choosing me. If I get to choose my thoughts, I wish somebody would have told me that when I was younger. Anyways, what's out of my control? What's in my control? What's the solution? And then I can choose. Remember, decisions decide destiny. That means I get to make a choice. I get to decide what actions, what thoughts would help me solve the problem. And let me just say one thing before I get to the next slide. If you think this little slide and the next slide are going to solve our COVID fears and anxiety in a 35-minute 4-slide presentation, and just because I have Canada written on my jacket, the answer is no. But the goal is, what are some tools so that we can tolerate this world that we're in right now, so we can find some semblance of control? So I have a challenge for you, and this is how it works. Set a reminder. Now, you can choose what that would be. So you could set a reminder on your phone, your computer. You could put little sticky notes. You can do it once a day. I'm working right now with 2 LPGA golfers, and as you know, their season has been suspended, and the amount of anxiety going on with them is over the top. So I've asked them to set a reminder 3 times a day, once in the morning, once in the afternoon, and once in the evening. The timer goes off because the timer reminds you, oh, right, I'm supposed to wait. So when the timer goes off, we wait and we ask ourselves, what am I thinking? And it reminds us to pay attention. And it's like, oop, I got to bring the parent in right now. I need to supervise what's going on in my brain. And then we shift, because what you're going to find is when the reminder goes off, many of the times you're going to have feelings that don't feel very good. I'm bored, I'm tired, I'm scared, I'm anxious, I'm nervous. I want this world to be different. How come I'm only allowed to be on Zoom? Why can't I go outside? You're going to find that it fits true. What you're thinking about is negative or repetitive. As soon as you pay attention to that, you go, okay, now I get to choose. And you shift. And you ask yourself, what thoughts would serve me better right now? What thoughts would take me toward my goal? What thoughts would take me toward my best self? What thoughts would take me toward the leader I want to become, the athlete I want to become, the person I want to become? And then step 4. Take those thoughts that you've chosen and now take action. And you notice how I have it, take action that solves the problem. Please, I'm not trying to say all you have to do is take one action and your entire COVID problems are solved. But I am saying if you can take some action and you can start solving some problems, it brings some certainty. It brings some predictability, and it brings a sense of control. So that is your mission, should you choose to accept it. I have to see if I have one more slide, but the slide might be, actually, I will show you this. If you want to take some very specific steps, I have a class starting on May 1st. That's the regular price. That's the price today. Well, not today. There's no deadline. The reduced price, that's the COVID price. We're in a crazy world, so I had to put a crazy price on there. You don't need to write any of this down. It's all in the PDFs that I've attached to the chat. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and Catherine, I'm coming back to you.
Thank you so much, Shawnee. That was really, really helpful. And I loved how action-oriented was. And it reminds me of, it's just one moment at a time, one thought at a time. And when we bring it back to the moment and not in the future, not in the past, it provides for more certainty, as you were saying.
Yes, and the way I say that is, it takes us out of the result, which is the future, which we cannot control, and it brings us in to the process, which is the now, which is the present, which is the only thing that we have any say over.
Thank you so much, Shawnee. So this is being recorded, so it's going to be available to all Glencoe members, and we'll share your materials. And I'm just wondering, with the participants on the line right now, is there anybody who would like to pop in with a question? Anybody? Any questions?
Jessica has her hand raised.
Oh, Jessica. Okay, I'm sorry.
I just unmuted myself.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jessica.
Hi, Miss Shawnee. Thank you for doing this for us today. So I'm curious how you got started on your journey, because I'm sure you didn't wake up one day and you were a coach. And I'm sure for other people who are listening today, they'd love to know your journey of how you became the Miss Successful Miss Shawnee Harle.
Well, I started off very humbly. I grew up in Campbell River, and I went to a 1A school. So I had like 60 people in my graduating class. And anyway, fast forward, basketball was my sport, and I played for 3 years at the University of Victoria. And you remember I told you at the beginning that talent only takes you so far, and then there's this ceiling of this mental toughness and character? Well, I didn't know it at the time, because I thought I was talented because I had only to compare it to the people that were in my little tiny 1A school. And what I learned was that the 3 years that I got to play were definitely not because of my talent. I was a bench player. I was a role player. You know, look back on, I call myself a 30-30 player. So I played when we were 30 points up or 30 points down. And anyway, after my 3rd year, I got cut, and it completely devastated me. And I hated my coach. I thought my coach was the biggest jerk that I'd ever met in the history of the universe. And again, those were, you know, the thoughts of I was still very young and immature. And the good part of it is I loved basketball so much, and I'm like, well, you're not going to let me do it as an athlete. I'm going to get into coaching. And isn't that cool that, you know, the biggest devastation of my life, getting cut, actually led to the biggest growth, and it inspired a passion in me that has now been, I was going to say 30 years, but I think it's longer than that. It's somewhere between 30 or 40 years that I've been doing this coaching. And so I went from small town Campbell River single A school to standing, you know, at the Olympics in Rio. Whew. Wow, I can still feel that. I can remember standing in front of the flag at the Rio Olympics, and the national anthem was playing before our first game, and I remember looking up at that flag thinking, how did a small town girl get to be standing right here? And you know, life is strange with its twists and turns, and my passion has held me well, and my mental toughness has held me well. And that's kind of how I ended up doing what I'm doing today.
Thanks, Shawnee. We have Steve Major. Steve Major, do you want to hop in? Thank you for that response. Or do you want me to ask the question? Steve Major, I know you. Come on in, Steve Major. Yay, there he is.
Just, I've got some laryngitis, so not the COVID, but some laryngitis. So I was just going to type my question, but I'll ask it from San Francisco. Hope you enjoy the Golden Gate in the back. Thank you for doing this, Shawnee. Finding this very helpful, especially in our family. We have 2 teenagers. We're all on top of one another. I've got 2 elderly parents, 89 and 87 years old, who do not want to be in their house 24/7 and want to go to Safeway to get groceries. So it's a tough time for everybody, and this is helping. So my question is this, to what extent can meditation help in your strategies? And as I say it, as I was typing here, I have mixed feelings about it myself, because on the one hand, so much of it seems flaky to me, like the old, if you remember Saturday Night Live, Stuart Smalley, who's the character that was advising Michael Jordan to just look in the mirror and repeat after me, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. That seems kind of flaky to me. On the other hand, I think there are some people that really get value out of meditation if it's focused, and I've not done a lot of it. So I wondered what your advice might be in that regard. That's my question. Thank you.
That's Steve, you've hit on I think a really important topic. And let me start with saying the way that I process it, you know, you're good enough, you're smart enough, you're strong enough, and gosh darn it, people like me. That's like telling a person, just go be confident. And again, that's why I think it doesn't work, because confidence, by the way, when I work with athletes and coaches and parents, I don't ever talk about confidence, because it's an outcome, it's a result. And confidence is an emotion based on results. Like, think about that for a minute. Confidence is an emotion based on results. It is not a personality characteristic. It's not a personality trait. That also means that confidence and competence are related. Confidence and competence. So when I'm good at something, I don't have to try to be confident. It's a natural result. I don't have to try. I also tell athletes, if you're crappy at something, you shouldn't feel confident. That's ridiculous. You know, I had a downhill ski racer that I was working with. He's like, Shawnee, it's race day tomorrow and I don't feel confident. I'm like, okay, talk about that. I said, what have you been doing for the past week? Long story short, he'd been going to bed at 1 a.m. He'd missed 2 days of training. And I'm like, well, you know what? You shouldn't feel confident, because confidence is earned. I can't give it to you. It's not a pill. It's not a magic potion. And you can't look in the mirror and say, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and I'm going to kick butt today on race day. You cannot trick yourself. That's my feeling. You can't trick yourself. So Steve, I think it's important that we understand what are we trying to get from meditation. And for me, with the athletes that I work with, I use 2 terms, meditation and mindfulness training. And they're similar. Some people like the term meditation, and other athletes that I work with, they actually like the term mindfulness training. The 2 professional golfers that I work with, they listen to Headspace. Not sure if you or the listeners are familiar with it. It's an app that the LPGA provides for free to all of their golfers. Like, isn't that awesome? And I believe LeBron James endorses Calm. And there are a number of professional athletes that are endorsing these these products because I believe that mindfulness and meditation is different than I'm trying to feel confident or feel good about myself. For me, mindfulness is the time that we sit and we just get a calm, we get a sense of what's going on with me. How often do athletes take 10 minutes? You know, the mindfulness app, you can do a 10-minute mindfulness training, and I'm sure Calm is the same way, where you just sit down and you sit and go, okay, what's going on with me right now? I believe, Steve, in general, most of the athletes that I work with are very emotionally unintelligent. So that's the opposite of emotional intelligence. They don't think about what they're thinking about. They don't pay attention to how they feel, except if it's a good one. And that's why I'm a fan of mindfulness, meditation, calm. I have one athlete, this one LPGA golfer that I worked with, she's like, Shawnee, that meditation thing doesn't work for me. And I'm like, okay, can you give me something that you would do for 15 minutes a day, 10 to 15 minutes a day, where all distractions are put aside and you're doing some self-reflection? And she said, well, let me think about that. So what she does now, she spends every evening, she sits down and does journaling. And I give her questions to journal about. What did you think about today? How often were your thoughts negative, repetitive? To me, that's mindfulness. To me, that's meditation. These are just opportunities to go inside and to self-reflect. And in general, the athletes that I work with, they don't do it and they're not very good at it. And then when push comes to shove, they have no idea what to do with all of the thoughts and feelings that overwhelm them. Steve, did you want to add a comment or ask me a question based on anything I've said? And if he does, he'd have to get unmuted. There he is.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you I've taken 7 pages of notes, so I'm finding this very helpful, not only for me, myself, but for my family members, and to try to get the message through to some very stubborn elderly parents. So it'll be interesting to see if they can embrace some of this. And then also,
can I just say something for that? If your elderly parents were on this call, what I would say to them right now, stubbornness is a choice. And decisions decide destiny. Stubbornness is not something that you're born with. It's something that you learn, and therefore you can unlearn it. So stubbornness is a choice. Is that choice serving you? Is your stubbornness taking you toward or away from your best self? Every time you make a decision, you come to the fork in the road. I have a decision to make. If I go this way, it takes me toward my goals, my best self, the person I want to become. If I make this decision, it takes me away. And then, Steve, the other thing you can say to them, when I decide to make a choice that takes me toward, what is my reward? What's the reward? In this instance, the reward is I get to stay healthy. I get to lower the chances that I'm going to end up in ICU. Every time you make the other choice, it takes you away from your best self. Away decisions always have a cost. That means you are free to choose, but you are not free from the consequences of your choice. Stubbornness is a choice, and it will come with cost and reward. That's just there's a logical, rational conversation that you could probably have with your parents, because it's not your job to change them, because we can't change people. We can only provide an environment where people can choose to change themselves.
thank you, Shawnee. That's very helpful.
Welcome.
So a few thank yous are in order, Jessica, for getting this organized.
Yeah, Jess.
Yeah, Jess. and everybody who's made the choice towards coming today. So thank you so much. And Shawnee, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and time with everybody, including me. So thank you so much. And yeah, thank you, Glencoe members.
Now, before everyone runs away, Catherine, can you tell people that you have another talk coming up?
Oh, yes. Well, there's a few talks coming up.
There are.
So there's a few talks coming up. There's Samara coming up next week, and I'll be talking on the Enneagram, which is really a roadmap for how do we become more present. And it's used by the top leaders around the world. In fact, George Lucas used it for Star Wars, for the creation of Star Wars, this personality map. And then the next talk I'm doing is on business, because I think there's a huge opportunity for business here, and we've got to seize it, and especially in Alberta. Now is the time. Now is the time, because if we don't do it, I think we're in trouble. So join us, join me, join the Glencoe, and good for the Glencoe to choose to put these on. So
thank you.
Can I just say one thing as a member? I'm finding that the Glencoe has really stepped up with its offerings to members, not only the virtual fitness, which I've been trying to do, but also this session today is most valuable. I'm fortunate enough to belong to a few other clubs, and I can say that some of them are handling this better than others. And I have not stopped paying any of my membership dues at any of the clubs, but I find that this is helpful to get some value for my membership. And I really applaud you for doing this, because some others are not. And it makes me wonder, when we come out of this, is that really a place I want to be a member of? So thank you.
Wow.
hey, Steve, on that, because you're so good with ideas and you've got such a brilliant mind, I know Jess would love to hear any further ideas you have, because honestly, they're flying by the seat of their pants. Like, this is nothing that anyone else has experienced before. So if you have ideas, I'd really encourage you to reach out to Jess, because she's been very, very open about how do we serve people and how do we help our community at this time. And the Glencoe's so known for doing that. Like, I think of the flood and how the Glencoe opened the doors for us during the flood. And they're doing the same now. So please, Steve, because I know how smart you are, please share ideas with Jess for how they can be helpful at this time.
Well, that's a nice warm fuzzy for my day. Thank you for telling me how smart I am. I'm going to tell my family now.
Good. And tell your son to keep on hooping.
Yeah, I will. Thank you.
Can I ask another question for Shawnee?
For sure.
Please.
That was a fantastic talk. My name is Lindsay, and I just had a question. You talked a few times during your slides about, repetitive thoughts, and when you get stuck on a problem and you just think about it round and round. Do you have any other specific kind of tips or tools to stop that cycle and stop that repetitiveness?
Well, you can only stop it if you know you're doing it. Right? You can't stop it if you don't know you're doing it. And I think that's why that reminder coming up 3 times or however many times a day with the acronym of WAIT, because you can't stop anything you don't know that you're unaware of. And the minute you use WAIT and you catch yourself and you be like, oh, there I am. I'm on that repetitive hamster wheel going round and round and round and round again with the same thoughts. What you'll often, I don't know what you'll find. I can only tell you what my athletes find. They find that when they are in negative, repetitive thinking, the hamster wheel, and then I ask them, what do your actions look like? Almost all of the time they tell me that they don't have any. And I'm like, well, no wonder the thoughts feel so terrible, because you can't get off the hamster wheel. The hamster wheel's turning you. And Lindsay, what I would just suggest is set a reminder so that you have to pause and wait. Ask yourself, what am I thinking? Then you're going to be like, oh, there I am. I'm on the hamster wheel. Then you go, okay, what other thoughts can I choose? that would get me off of the hamster wheel. And then how do I act on those thoughts? The hamster wheel are negative, repetitive thoughts with no action. They only create fear. And that's also why you feel out of control, because you're not acting on anything. This little mental toughness challenge, if you will take that PDF and follow it, it will, I can't guarantee that all of your negative feelings go away, but it will just help the feelings subside a little bit. Feel like, oh, it feels a little more manageable because you've shifted your thoughts, because remember, we get to choose our thoughts. And then you've taken those thoughts and you've put them into action. Whenever we take action, it helps us feel more of a sense of control.
That's great. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. So thank you, everybody. Stay tuned for next week. Oh, I can see some of you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye, everybody. Be well.